Welcome to the Not For The Average podcast. This is your host, Trent Lashan. Today, we have something very special for you. This is the first episode of our Master Coach series. Today, I'm going to be talking youth development in sports, in particular soccer, with Darren Bowman. Darren is an ex-professional UK soccer player who swapped his boots for a whiteboard and has since spent over 2 decades at the leading edge of youth football development in Europe. Darren spent 11 years at the Manchester City Academy, starting as a junior coach and then becoming head coach, and has been directly involved with developing some of the world's best youth soccer players. He's also studied at numerous sporting organisations such as FC Barcelona and Real Madrid, to name a few. He's also a UEFA A licensed coach. In this episode, we're going to be exploring what it really takes to make it as an elite footballer or athlete in today's game. We're going to be exploring what our future stars need to be doing on and off the pitch to flourish in the game they love. We're going to be talking about the do's and don'ts for parents. We also talk high performance culture, leadership, recruitment, and talent identification, and more. Darren is a master coach and he's a breath of fresh air. I can't wait to share this with you. Let's go. How are you in Shanghai?
Really good, thanks Trent. Pleasure to be with you today. Beautiful day in Shanghai.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to this interview because it's a little bit off topic. We've had numerous conversations on the topic of coaching and junior player development. So while this interview is a little bit different from our normal content, what it will do is focus on elite coaching, people development, and optimizing human potential. Now, Darren, we got a little bit of a snapshot in the intro, your cred, so to speak, and what you've achieved in your career. But what attracted you to coaching and why you're so passionate about junior football development?
Well, for me, Trent, it goes off, I suppose you could say, a modest playing career. I was fortunate to be one of few people to actually get paid for doing what they love, and that was playing football. And then I was one of them people who was really lucky that since the age of 4, all I wanted to do was football. So after playing and then going into coaching, the passion then was to give young people the opportunity that I had. Going to a big city like Birmingham. I only came from a small village in South Wales. So from day one, really, the experience started. And yes, it was a different era. Late 80s, early 90s, and then through to the 2000s. But that experience as a young player, Trent, really stood me in good stead looking back now for my coaching career. Because that is part and parcel of the journey for a young player now trying to make their way in the game. And, even more so than what I experienced, we're talking about players now who are moving countries. They're moving to different cultures altogether to follow this dream and to make it as a professional. So that goes to show you as well how much the game's evolved over the years.
Darren, you spent well over a decade actually at Manchester City Academy, starting as a junior coach and then becoming a head coach. And you were involved in the development of some outstanding junior talent, some of which have gone on to very successful careers already. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and some of the young players that you were directly involved in developing?
Yeah, well, for me, Trent, it was about, I boil it down to the 4 Ps. So professionalism, passion, perseverance, and patience. And they were 4 things that always stood me in good stead, even from starting out on my journey as a young coach at Manchester City's academy at Main Road, which I think a lot of people forget was actually a very successful academy at the time, with the players that were in the youth team, Micah Richards, Daniel Sturridge, Ben Mee, Kieran Trippier. They all went on to become full internationals, playing for big clubs, etc. So right from early on in my coaching career, I was really fortunate to be in the company of, coaching royalty, as it was at the time. So there was no real better apprenticeship that I could get than the people that I was not working alongside, but observing and being mentored on a daily basis. So, and then the journey of the club going from where it was to where it is today, and being fortunate to be there for 11 seasons in the end. And, you know, these academies, Trent, they're full of so much potential and potential talent. And some of the players that I was fortunate to work with over a number of years, you know, people will see now what Phil Foden is doing for Manchester City and
Phil Foden
and England. Phil Foden, probably the best talent I was fortunate enough to work with on a daily basis, and work with him over a 3-4 year period. Brahim Diaz, Jadon Sancho, Tommy Delabashiru, Tyrese Campbell. You know, the list is long, Trent. Because, you know, a decade at the club, you work with many, many players. I mean, David Brooks, who's now at Bournemouth, Tommy Doyle, who's making his way. They've played first team football. And that's because I started off in the junior academy. So I learnt my trade in the junior academy and was in charge of the recruitment and the talent idea of the Manchester City U9 squad. And a lot of them players are still at the club. Cole Palmer, Tommy Doyle, Taylor Howard-Bellis. They're now young professionals who are training with Pep Guardiola and the stars of that Manchester City team. Yeah, like I say, everyone at the club knew, and you know, I suppose the cream, if you like, of that talent is Phil Foden. And it's no surprise really to people that know him and work with him to see what he's doing now.
Okay, this is interesting. So as a parent of young athletes, this to me is a special podcast that's a little bit off topic. But like I said, we are linking in high performance coaching and talent development. We'll talk a bit about recruitment as well. But go back to someone like a Phil Foden. So as a junior, 10, 12, what are you seeing? As someone that goes on to the success he's already had, are they head and shoulders above everyone else, or have they got certain attributes that are just, or qualities that you go, okay, this kid could potentially?
Yeah, well, these players, Trent, from a young age stand out. You know, they catch the eye on any football pitch, playing at any standard. Whether that's in the grassroots game, which they normally come from, their local clubs. But you're also looking for, you know, the personality and the characteristics that can be developed over a period of time. And then it's about the process and the environment that you will put them players into.
Gotcha.
On a daily basis.
The fertile ground.
Correct.
The environment. We'll talk about culture and the environment as well today. I think that's really important. So we're talking about talent identification and how important recruitment is and what you're looking for. All elite clubs, whether it be professional football clubs, AFL, rugby league, soccer, you know, the recruitment plays a huge role in the team's success, recruiting the right people. Hey, it's the same in business, Darren. But at a junior level, what are those characteristics that you're looking for? Those qualities that you said Phil had? Well,
consistency is one, Trent. And, you know, it's about doing the basics. And these players do the basics very, very well. They're consistently good. They're consistently good on a daily basis. And they have a drive within them. So they have a work ethic. They have a thirst and a desire to improve and continually develop. They can always get better in their world, no matter who they've played or where they've played or what they've done on that day. There's always room for improvement. So they have a drive and they have a desire. They also have an inner confidence as well in their own ability. And when you identify them characteristics and them traits, and then you put them into a high performance environment and a program, then them attributes are only magnified.
Gotcha.
And that's when you really start to push them and challenge them and stretch them. And you normally find with this type of player, the harder you push, the harder you challenge, the bigger the task. They rise to the occasion and they enjoy it. They want it. I think, Trent, one of your roles as the coach is you need to facilitate and create that environment for that level of player. That's your job. So you have to be the catalyst to bring all that out. And I think one of the big messages is, you have to zip your ego in the back pocket, because it's all about the players. It's all about their development, and your role in the stage of their career at that time is paramount in youth development, because what you're giving them then, they'll take with them where they go. So it's very, very important that you're giving them the right messages and, the right role model.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for there. Role modeling, mentoring, teaching is at the core of coaching. You're looking for this high performance, and we're talking about a junior football player here, consistently plays well, consistently good, does the basics well, has a strong work ethic and drive. And you also mentioned confidence, which does come through experience, doesn't it? Like that confidence does come naturally. Some juniors have got a bit of swagger to them already, whether that's confidence or arrogance, I'm not sure. But and that when you push them, they rise to the occasion, and they seem to thrive on being pushed and taken out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely, Trent. And you have to do your due diligence as well as a coach or as a multidisciplinary team, because, regards contact time, it's as much about what they do away from the club and away from the pitch as well, rather than when they arrive on the pitch. You have to make it your business. It's a forensic attention to detail to know everything about this player. So what's their family life like? What are their support structures? What are they like academically? What's their diet and nutrition like? What's their sleep like? So it really is attention to detail. And your job as the coach or any of the staff around this potential talent, that's what you do.
Know your customer.
Correct. Exactly the same. Exactly.
Know your target audience.
Know the person, know the player.
It does feel like we are behind other parts of the world when it comes to development. That's one of the questions I actually had, Darren, was, how does Europe differ to Australia when it comes to development? Or what does the best practice look like for our juniors?
One of the biggest differences, which is my understanding, Trent, is, this pay to play. So in Europe, in the UK, the grassroots local clubs that are well regulated by the FA and their FA chartered standard clubs, then yes, parents will have to pay subs for their child to register with that club. But it's not, we're not talking a lot of money. And then when the talent is identified and put on different pathways through different clubs and academies, then parents don't pay for that. So I think that's one area where Europe and the UK really differ from some countries. That actually, in a way, makes the coach's job easier. Because, like you'll know in business, Trent, the client pays you for a service. And then I suppose in business, I don't know if the saying the customer's always right. Does that resonate with yourself?
That's always gets debated. Is not always right, but what they think and feel matters. So it's actually understanding them. Going back to your point about understanding the customer, understanding the player, I think that's really important. We've got kids playing. We've got to get them into the right environments. What you talked about earlier, if a player is consistently playing well, does the basics really well, has that work ethic, drive, and confidence, is doing the right things on and off the pitch, then you've got to get them into the right environments. And what does that environment look like? You've got to be getting exposure to great coaching and be around good players, and it's got to be a nutritious, fertile ground. So it's how do we find that fertile ground? That's the big question here, because I'm sure in Australia, parents will pay anything to put their kids in those environments. So just coming back a little bit to coaching, because that's at the core of what we're talking about today. Are our kids, when they pay the $2,000 or plus $2,000 to go into these NPL environments, are they getting great coaching? Now, you've been as an ex-professional player, you've played at a high level, you're a UEFA accredited coach. You've been around great coaches from all around the world. Who's the best coach you've worked with and why? Because I wanted to link that into what makes a great coach.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, Trent, the best coach I've ever worked with and seen work on the pitch, and there's a couple, but a mentor and a really good friend of mine now is Brian Ashton, who's actually the rugby coach. Mm-hmm. Now, he, for example, he doesn't classify us as coaches.
So he's the English rugby coach.
So he was the backs England rugby coach when England won the Rugby World Cup under Clive Woodward. So he also managed Ireland, and he's done a lot of work with the Australian Federation and New Zealand Federation regards rugby development. And he sees us as educators, not coaches. We're educators. And then on my coach education pathway, especially with my A license, it was coming into contact with Dick Bate, the late Dick Bate. And if you speak to most British coaches, everyone will have heard of Dick Bate. And watching Dick and Brian Ashton coach is really like watching art. It's poetry. And their emotional intelligence, their self-awareness to get what they want out of each individual in different ways is quite extraordinary.
That sounds like people skills.
Exactly. And that's what you are, Trent. And it's a methodical approach. So when you've got this talent, you're responsible for this talent. And in my case at Manchester City, my job was to create Champions League footballers who could play for Manchester City's first team. That was the job every day, every single day. Now, number one is if you don't believe that is possible, then you're in the wrong job. But we all believed it was possible. And one of the things that Manchester City did really well when they developed the City Football Academy is the young players from their training pictures could see the stadium every day. You know, the motivation.
Goals, vision, hope for the future.
Every day. Every day.
Brilliant. So they're always top of mind. They're always looking over and seeing that stadium. That's where I want to be one day. That's correct. Powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. But as well with that, Trent, as well, you have to manage the expectations, because the reality is not every player in an academy system is going to get to that level. But there's different ways to get there on the journey to fulfill potential. Now, we might be looking at fulfilling potential and talent on and off the pitch. So as a coach and as part of a multidisciplinary team, you have to wear all these different hats all the time. And you have to be aware of which hat to wear, when, with who, for what reason. So the how, what, and why, and when is absolutely paramount. And, you know, you have to know yourself before you can influence others.
Very, very good point.
And you absolutely have to know your players.
So how do you, the link there between, you know, you mentioned at Manchester City, our job was to create champions. Now that's a strong message. You know, as a coach, I'm here to create champions. On and off the pitch, it's different, because then you're thinking about linking in life skills and values and things like, you know, those things that you mentioned earlier. And I'll come back to them. Those 5 things that make a high potential junior: consistently plays well, does the basics well, work ethic, drive, and confidence. You could say that applies to an adult in business. They're life skills. The ability to be able to deliver on those things.
Yeah, so what we're talking about, Trent, is an holistic approach. Well, the actual strapline within the academy, within the club, was our job was to create technically gifted, independent, decision-making winners. That's what we had to create.
Technically gifted, independent,
decision-making winners.
Yeah. And again, that's to me, that would apply to an adult in the real world. You've got to be very good at what you do. You've got to be independent. You've got to make great decisions. And again, if you really want to shoot for the stars, you have to have a growth mindset. And you've got to have that winning attitude, don't you?
So 100%.
Those knowing yourself, the young coach, but someone like a Brian, you mentioned Brian and Dick being great examples because they had a high emotional intelligence, they were aware, and they had great people skills. How do you deliver on that if you're a young coach? If you're 20, 21 or 25, you don't have the life skills. You don't probably even know yourself. So how do you translate that into being a great coach?
Well, that's your responsibility as a young coach. So I was always a seeker. So I went and sought out these master coaches. And like I say, my apprenticeship, I was fortunate that I was under the apprenticeship of Jim Cassell, Alex Gibson, Paul Power. And then, on my journey through the club with people like Scott Sellers and then Rodolfo Borrell, when he came in, who's now Pep Guardiola's assistant. So it really is about who you're exposed to, Trent. Yeah. And if you identify them individuals, then you have to find a way. So if I go back to when Brian started working with me, which was an unbelievable opportunity, but the reality was I needed Brian. Brian didn't need me. This guy's an NBA, a World Cup winner. So you have to drive that as a young coach. And I go back to the passion and the perseverance and the professionalism and the patience. All these things, you have to develop yourself as an individual before you can develop others. Now, actually, as a young coach, it's a fantastic opportunity and it's a challenge to do both at the same time. Yet that's why, in my opinion, I was very fortunate to learn my trade in the junior academy when we were dealing with the 5 to 8 year olds and signing the U9s for the academy team. That's where I learned all these things. And it's a different type of pressure than when you're coaching the U15s, U16s, and you've got that all-star studded squad. I was a different coach then to the coach that joined the club, and I'm a different coach today. And like I say, I wouldn't actually class myself as a coach now. I'd be more of an educator, more of a consultant because of that experience and because of them life skills. So my advice for a young coach in today's world with a global game that is everywhere is go and seek out these people, go and seek out these practices and be aware of how you conduct yourself. And you'll be amazed at how many doors open. Yet only, like you said, Trent, if you have a growth mindset, because a fixed mindset will only get you so far.
You've studied at other organizations like FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atalanta. You've invested your own time and energy into your own education. So that's exactly what you were talking about there, investing in yourself. You are the number one influencer. That's the boom language. You are the number one influencer. So you've got to invest in your own knowledge.
Right.
And invest in that knowledge may or probably should absolutely almost always includes mentors. Who are you learning from?
Absolutely.
As a young coach, who are you learning from? And that's there's a big responsibility we put on our teachers, Darren, whether that's public or private school, whether that's, sporting coaches are often a really big part of a child's life, particularly those that are active in sport like mine. So it is a big responsibility. Who are we entrusting our children with? It's a really important question, I think, because what are they actually learning? What are they learning? And again, coming back to getting into those nutritious, fertile ground so they can learn. The story of the juniors looking up and seeing the stadium every day, that's just activation, isn't it? That growth mindset and the willingness to keep pushing towards a goal because they can see it. They can actually see where they want to be ultimately. That's a great takeaway. Now, Darren, talk about development, and a lot of philosophy is built around player-centered development, but how important is the team development? And what are you focusing on? You go back to a place like Manchester City or, are you focusing on the individual player, or you're focusing on the team development, or both?
You're focusing on both all the time, Trent. So in youth development, your job is to produce players. That's the number one. So, but if you break it down, so you've got the individual, and then you've got the dynamics within the team. So, you'll break your team down into, your back four, your defensive unit will be one dynamic, your midfield unit will be another dynamic, then your attacking players will be another dynamic. It really is then about the multidisciplinary team and the sports science and the strength and conditioning and the individual player plans. And you as the lead coach, first of all, being able to manage all them individuals within your team at the same time as managing the staff individually within that multidisciplinary team. So it's a big task. It's not an easy role, because the sports scientists will want what they want for the data, and the goalkeeping coach will want what they want, and the analysts will be looking at certain aspects of what they want, and you have to manage all that. So as a coach at that level, you're managing your staff, and you're also managing the players, and you're also managing the individuals within them teams to get the best out of everyone. And if you do it right, when you're working with your analysis, for example, you don't even have to speak, because the analyst knows what you're thinking and what you want and how to present that information to the players, to the teams. So what we're talking about now, Trent, is accountability and responsibility, and involving everyone on that journey. So, I would involve the players in the decision-making process for their development. So it wasn't me making the decisions, it was me guiding them and them discovering. And then on match days, for example, there wouldn't be a team talk, because the stage was for them. And if you've done the job correctly, your work is done, and all you have to do is sit back and watch the players execute. If you're still doing work on a Saturday morning before a game, then, in my opinion, you've probably missed something, or you're not comfortable with something. But if you've done the job correctly, all your staff, all your players will be well informed. Everybody plays their position, everybody plays their role. And then, sometimes you still don't get the result that you want or you expect, yet you've guaranteed the process. But that process is daily, weekly, monthly, annually. In these type of environments, Trent, and I suppose in business, you have bad days, you lose money. You can't really have many bad days at this level.
We've got to trust the process. Sounds like you've got to trust the process and dare to prepare. All those multidisciplinary, holistic elements you're talking about. So on game day, you can just create. You can express yourself. How do you, we see this a lot in junior sports. You see this in business as well, but it's the selfish player. I look at the selfish players that aren't team players. They're very technically, you talk about technically gifted, independent, yes, but the decision-making is not there. They do have the winning attitude. They're very competitive. They don't want to give the ball away. How do you address that? Because as a parent, I'm thinking the coach should address it, or is it something the coach looks for and wants that player to express themselves?
So I think in my world, Trent, what you're talking about there is the maverick, who is probably the game changer as well. Now, what we did and what I do is I moved to situational coaching. So I'll put that type of player in different situations with different challenges, with different restrictions. And especially in a situation where you might play that player up with older players. And then there will be different consequences to the decisions that player makes. And then the choices and the consequences will either be positive or negative. Then that's that's a way of learning for that player. And again, methodically, sometimes you have to break that player down to build them back up. But you have to involve them in the process. And most importantly, which is one of the things I see a lot of coaches missing, is you have to coach the why. The players have to understand why. As human beings, we're naturally curious. Why is he asking me to do this? Why does she want me to sit there? Why does he want me to be in this position when the ball's there? That's a natural reaction. And as a coach, if your players understand why, you're 90% there. So for me, you should embrace that type of player, embrace that talent. Maybe that talent needs rescuing in some way. Maybe there's some things off the pitch that are affecting that player's attitude, that player's demeanor, that player's body language. But yeah, as a coach, you need to be able to pick up on them cues. And then you need to be able to make the right decisions for that player. So, and then again, that's about respect, trust, and building that relationship on a daily basis.
Gotcha. The selfish player. In their mind, they're not selfish.
Correct.
They're doing what they think they need to. But maybe in the team's mind, the team's collective mind, they're selfish. So I want to link that into culture and values or trademark. Description, what is culture? We're talking about a high-performance team here. We're not talking about social culture. What is culture? And how important is it to the team dynamic?
Yeah, well, it is huge, Trent. Yeah, it's actually quite complicated to manage because in youth development, there's only 11 shirts for the team. And the reality is there's only probably 2 or 3 spots with that first team. So you're building a team, but they're all in competition with each other all of the time, every single day. Now, when you get a best v best environment, like what we're describing, then the levels, the intensity that these players will train at. We had training that was more competitive than some of our games. The culture and the environment is built on the essence and the values of the club and what the club stands for.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it actually goes wider than that, Trent, in my experience. So, where is the club situated? In what part of the country? What are them people known for? What do they want to see? Well, they're hardworking people. They work hard for the money. They want to see a team on the pitch that fights, etc., etc. So it's about the culture of the part of the country and the culture of the community and what they expect and what they want to see and what they value. And then, the hierarchy in a club, their job is to position the club in the community accordingly. And then your job as staff and the coach is to keep drip feeding their messages into the players every single day. Now, if we go back to a Phil Foden is a Blue. Phil Foden was a Manchester City fan before he went to Manchester City. Phil Foden used to ball boy at every game, whether it was Manchester City versus Rotherham in the FA Cup, or whether it was Manchester City versus Man United. He lives and breathes the club, and that's all he wanted to do. So
there's the passion, Darren. There's the passion at a young age. The single-minded, selfish focus, seems to be a common trait with high performers that reach high levels in whatever they do. There's a real single-mindedness in how they look at life. Sometimes it's simplistic, but that's an example of someone at a very young age knowing what they want. And that is the number one boom success tip, Darren. Know what you want. Half the battle in life.
Yeah.
You talk about what's on the field, what's off the field is character. It's who someone is. You can turn behaviors. On behaviors, consistent behaviors, habitual behaviors, and that can be shaped by environment and culture. But you're saying just the culture of the club has to come through the way that the teams operate and think and behave. The culture of the team reflects the culture of the club. So if the club's values are not clear, then how on earth do the teams have a clear understanding of culture? How do the coaches, teach and educate the kids within that culture? So that to me is often a missing piece, is the club's not really crystal clear on what they stand for. And they might have a mission painted on their wall, but we don't see it lived by the coaches. We don't see it lived by the parents. We don't see it lived by the players. I think that's, to me, what makes a great club. And I've been exposed in my own business travels with elite clubs, and the ones that are really have that sustained long-term success are really clear on what they stand for. And there are non-negotiables that align with that as well. So
I think that one of the important things as well, Trent, is you speak the same language. So, all the staff, we spoke the same language. And if you're not in that environment, you won't really understand the language, but the players understand it. The staff understand it.
Yeah.
And that's the language that you speak every day, whether you're talking about the way we play, or whether you're talking about the way we act or our expectations. But we got to a stage at Manchester City, and obviously they've gone on a lot further now as well. But if you didn't know, you would be able to tell which was the Manchester City team by the way they carry themselves, by the way they play, by the way they speak. That's the reflection of the club.
That's evidence that the culture is alive, built on values. They're built on language. There's evidence. You can actually see the culture alive by the way they play, by the way they hold themselves on and off the pitch. That's a great message. Your why is really important as a coach, which links back into your mission or purpose as a club. What are you there to do? But I do know one thing, and that is you've got to get great coaches. You've got to put them in the right environments, which means how do you choose a club? Well, you've got to choose a club that aligns with your values. Darren, we're making the best decisions we can for our kids. Every parent that I know that has a competitive kid, I have competitive kids that play a lot of sport, love their soccer, football, is a lot of parents have the rose-colored glasses on, Darren. Little Sally's going to be the next, superstar, or little Tom going to be the next superstar. So what are some of the do's and don'ts for parents to help their kid flourish in the game?
In youth development, Trent, the audience of the parents is a key component, is absolutely critical. And, managing the parents is sometimes more difficult than managing the players. It's about education and involving them in your process to a certain level so that they have a level of understanding. The emotional part is huge. But we can go really deep into this regards, communication. What you say and what you do at any given time will affect that child. And for me, the best advice I can say is for all parents is just be consistent and be balanced. So if I put that in football terms, we never got too excited when we won, and we never got too down when we lost, because we were always focused on the process. Trust the process, and we never came off track. We always stuck. We were always on track with the process. And then we educated parents accordingly. And, sometimes parents will try and live their career that they think they should have had through their son or daughter's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, ultimately, we're dealing with children. And the world today that they live in is a different world that we lived in when we were the same age. So you have to, for me, Trent, you're dealing with 3 different time zones, which is the past, the present, and the future.
Mm-hmm.
A mother or father's past and what they came through and the environment that they were a product of is different today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would hope, for the better. The present is always about 2 things for me, for the child. Are they happy and are they healthy? Paramount. You have a duty of care to the child. You win a game, you lose a game. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? And it's the type of language you use and the type of communication that you use at the right time. So I would never recommend any parent, in my opinion, on that 1 hour drive home or that 90-minute drive home. That's a crucial period of time for the parent to either have a positive or a negative influence on their son or daughter. And the reality is, in the child's eyes, the game has either been and gone, and especially the little ones, they don't even think about it.
No.
If we're talking development phase, the teenagers,
yeah,
they already know if they played well or not, or if they played to what the standard they expected. They already know that. So they don't need that enforcing. They don't need telling about that. So, and then finally, it's about the professional, and the professional is the coach, and the professional is the staff, because they will know exactly where that player is in their development. And they will also know and have information that the parents don't know. So that player will have been given individual objectives, for example, in a game.
Yeah.
The parent won't understand why this player keeps trying to do this.
Yes, it's true. It's very true. Well,
So
that comes back to
where
trusting the process, Darren. I think that's the thing that you watch the documentaries, you hear the stories about kids at a young age going to 10 academies by the time they're 12, because the parents just keep shopping them around, and that can't be good for them. But there's a lack of trust there because the rose-colored glasses are on, and there's
I think it's a lack of education,
though.
It's a lack of education as well. Parent education is key.
Yeah.
And parents have to be a support. They have to support.
It's not about you,
in
parent.
A positive way.
It's not about you, Dad. It's not about you, Mum. It's about the kid. Are they happy? Are they healthy? Two simple questions. Trusting the process is a big one, though, Darren.
Well, I would say, what is the process?
Well, again,
I'm very clear on what the process is in the UK and Europe. I'm learning about the game in Australia, and the developments over there. But like you said to me before, I want to be a Socceroo. Well, the natural byproduct of a player developing at a club like Manchester City is they end up playing for England. It's a natural progression.
Yeah. So, which is where they need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's there is a trusting the process, trust the environments you're putting your kid in, trust the coach. Is the coach investing in my son or daughter? Do they know them well? Do my values align with the club's values? Are they clear? There's lots of little navigational instruments we can use as parents to help us navigate into the right environments. And then, of course, be aware of the parent that it's all about them. It's not about the kid. And I think that's a trap as well, because you want the best for your kid. But like you said, that timeline's very elegant. The past, the present, and the future. Adults have a different past to what the kids are experiencing now. There's things like games. Xbox is massive. Kids are doing other things off the pitch, as well. So socially we're changing as well.
And another point, Trent, on that would be emotions are affected by results. Winning or losing a game at U12s, is that going to be really relevant in that child's development?
Absolutely not. That becomes the focus, though, doesn't it?
But that affects people's behaviors, not just parents, coaches as well.
Yeah.
So it's about having, you have to have one eye on the future and the outcome and where this process is taking you. So the reality is, Trent, I can't remember the last time Man City or Man United, if we take the FA Youth Cup, for example. Yes, it's nice to win the FA Youth Cup, but it's more important to produce players for the first team.
There's a natural pathway there. There's a clear outcome, clear goals.
And you've got to work to that outcome every day. I mean, the same you'll do in business, right?
Well, you've got to have, you can't see the future, you're in trouble. You need to at least see it. I do know this, the most unsuccessful people I know, Darren, don't have goals. They might be happy though. That's important. You said the two things, healthy and happy. People are unique, kids are unique, and it's the understanding piece is really as important as it is with kids, as it is with adults, as it is important in business, which is actually knowing it's all about people. You mentioned Brian and Dick, just having a really acute, finely tuned awareness and people skills that's what made them a great coach. I think that applies across the board. It makes you a great parent. It makes you a great, business person. It makes you a great teacher. It makes you a great friend. The life skills that we can teach kids at a young age are really important. That's why getting them into the right environments is so important, Darren. Hey, Darren, will we ever see you working in Australia? Because, you're very decorated. You have an amazing coaching pedigree, and you've invested a lot of time and energy, worked with some amazing clubs, got a lot of knowledge to share. And you're currently in Shanghai. Do you think one day you've had enough of Shanghai and you might get or China and get across to Australia and help our juniors over here?
Yeah, for me, Trent, like I said before, I'm always a seeker. And, one of the reasons I came to China was the opportunity to help China, develop the game, and especially with their youth. And for me, Trent, I see Australia as another country that's emerging now, and it's a country that really interests me, and I think like all countries has unbelievable potential. So yeah, absolutely. For me, at my time now in my career, things that are important, Trent, is the project, the people, and if it's actually possible to achieve what people are setting out. So, I hear many, many good things about Australia. I think the federation in the 11-point plan, are talking about the right things, the right people, the right club, the right project. If all them pieces of the jigsaw fit, then absolutely, I'd be more than happy to come to Australia on the next stage of my journey.
Brilliant. Well, we'll watch this space then, shall we?
I always have the mindset, you never know where the next opportunity is going to come from, but I've definitely got one eye on the Australian market now. And, and I think there's huge potential for growth. And, the investment that these clubs make now in youth development and, the transfer system being implemented, then that's, we have to remember as well, Trent, that football is also a business.
Big business. Very big business. Really have enjoyed our chat today, Darren. I'd love to pick your brain again and go a little bit deeper on a couple of these topics. We'll get some feedback from the audience before we do that, but I really appreciate you taking the time out.
And I think I can leave you with this one, which resonates with sport and business. What is your one word equity? So for any young coach out there, or maybe more experienced coach, what is your one word equity? That one word that represents you. And
what is the one word that best describes you as it links to your personality, brand, and purpose?
Yeah. What is your one word equity? And that was given to me by one of my mentors a few years ago now.
I've got mine,
it's
Darren.
Fascinating.
I've got mine. Would you like
Boom?
to hear? Boom is one, the Boom brand. Yes. One is passion. Passion. That is my one word equity. Definitely.
There you go.
You've got to have the passion. These are the links you go to when you're passionate is, looking for best practices and learning and educating, investing time, energy into learning more. And I think for me today, it's been fantastic. And obviously every chat I have with you, Darren, it's illuminating. And I hope that I've been able to transfer that across for our listeners. Great takeaways for life, for our kids, which are our most precious resource. And of course, for us in business, I think some great takeaways as well. So wanted to thank you again for coming on. But before you go, If people want to connect in with you, Darren, or want to learn more, where do we find you? You've got a social presence. You've got a couple of websites.
Yeah, I got my DB7K consultancy, Trent. So I'm working as a consultant. It can be .com, .cn, .hk for Hong Kong.
Okay.
So and if there's anyone who's got any burning questions or anything of interest, obviously there's some communication channels there that they can get in touch with. I work a lot now on the coach education side. So educating the coaches so they can educate the children, and that's working in education sectors, et cetera. So yeah, the DB7K consultancy at the moment.
Well, hopefully Australian club gets a hold of you. We'd love to see you in the A-League.
I look forward to it.
Thanks, Darren. All the best. Look forward to catching up soon.
Cheers, Trent. Take care.
Trent Leishan is the founder and CEO of Australia's #1 sales training company, Boom Sales. Sales expert, fast growth specialist, and author of 2 business titles, Outlaw and The Naked Salesman. The Not For The Average podcast exposes the secrets to extraordinary performances in sales, entrepreneurship, and business growth. Warning, this show is not for the average.